So, we get to the ferry terminal. It's nighttime now. We're coming up to it. It had been raining all day. Okay? It had been raining all day. And it was getting progressively worse. The wind was pretty bad. And I remember, you know, it's being one of those rains where it's not just like, it's not just like stormy rain. It's really heavy, like big raindrops. But the wind was so strong that everything was just kind of going horizontal. You know, we were in the ferry terminal, and you just see rain outside, and it's just coming in this way. Like you're looking at a window, and the rain's just doing this. There is no such thing as down in the world anymore at this point. It was everything is going this way. And so we were inside, and everybody was kind of getting dry, and we were waiting for our ferry ride. And people were, you know, there was a little arcade there, you know, playing on the arcade, or they were just talking with some friends and whatnot. And I was kind of just exploring the terminal, and just kind of going about my business. Because, you know, I'm a bit of an introvert, so I just wanted to kind of stay by myself. And so I'm over at this window. And I'm looking outside, and I'm just watching the rain and whatnot. And where I'm looking out the window, I can kind of see the parking lot, and then I can see where the 3 ferries meet up at the terminal to load the cars. And so this is kind of, you know, obviously I can't do perspective very well, because I'm bad and I should feel bad. I'm also not going to put the effort in. But this is a window, okay? So here's the window that I'm looking out. And like I said, the rain's all going sideways. And outside here, we've got the parking lot. Comes across here. Actually, wait, no, I will make this a little higher up. Comes across here, and then at some point here, it cuts down and goes over here. Okay? And just for scale, alright, so here's, you know, some cars about this big. And then over here, so this is all like water and whatnot over here. This is all kind of just water. And water over on the back side of that too. This is all ocean over here. And over here we have the 3 boats. Okay, so just for the sake of being whatever, we've got the first boat here. I'm just going to make very simple boats. Alright, first boat. And they have the ramps going down for cars and stuff to load onto the boat. And then we had the second boat, which was, you know, let's say, it was a little smaller. Okay. Alright, a little smaller. And then we had the third boat, which, how I describe it, is more like a lifeboat for the first boat. Okay? And so we're, I'm looking outside, and the water is like coming over the freaking parking lot, and you know, it was coming onto the cars and just massacring the cars. The cars were shaking whenever the water hit. And it was just, the water was epic, because like I said, the storm was insane. I mean, and this is in like a harbor of sorts, so and there's all breakwater and everything. And the water, the swells were huge. Were like actually enormous, and they were all coming over, and it was crashing, and it looked like the scene from The Perfect Storm. And I'm looking out this window and I'm seeing this happening. Now, these two boats weren't having, you know, a really particularly bad time. The cars were kind of, you know, loading on, and the trucks were loading on, and they were all, you know, in their lineup to get onto their boats respectively. You know, just waiting to get, you know, in line, waiting to get onto their boats. And I'm just kind of, you know, observing. And on this boat down here, the other two not so much, but on this boat, the platform that had come down to meet that people kind of drive up to, yeah, it's kind of like bolted down or whatever, but it was like shifting and lifting a bit because the waves were so ridiculous. Like it was, so when a car would go onto the ramp, every now and then it would lift a bit, and you know, like the third tire would come up off the ground, and I'm sitting here going, you know, if the water and everything is this bad right now, and the rain was still coming down like crazy at this point, and it didn't show any signs of slowing, you know, the sky was like dark as hell, like real thunderstorm dark. So what, you know, how bad is it out on actual open water? It's gotta be insane. And at this point, Mr. Dunbar, so I'm, you know, I'm sitting here at the window, just looking out, and here comes Mr. Dunbar. Walks up behind me. He puts a hand on my shoulder and he says, "How you doing, Mr. Morehouse?" It's how he always addressed me, Mr. Morehouse. I called him big guy, he called me Mr. Morehouse, and we called Mr. Minicello because he was like super old. Minicello taught my mom in school, so we called him the young guy. Never actually called them Mr. Dunbar or Mr. Minicello. It was always, unless we were in trouble or something, we always called them by their nicknames that we gave them. So he comes over, he puts his hand on his shoulder. "How you doing, Mr. Morehouse?" And I said, "Well, you know what, sir? I'm not doing too bad. You know, I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?" He said, "Oh, pretty good." And you know, I had been thinking about all the stupid stuff that had happened on this trip so far. Really, the first day we took forever just to get to Cape Breton. We almost lost Ryan to a piece of rogue lasagna. We had a creamer fight that just about coated the entire restaurant in crap. We almost got thrown out of the hotel. The teachers had lost their minds. It is, you know, we were out that day in a storm of the friggin' century. And so I'm just trying to think to myself, what could possibly, you know, what else could go wrong here? And I'm looking out at the three boats, and I'm thinking, you know, I have an idea. So I looked at Mr. Dunbar. I said, "Sir, I've got. Can I take a guess at something?" And he said, "Sure, Mr. Morehouse. What would you like to take a guess at?" And I said, "Just given all the stuff that has already happened on this trip." And he said, he laughed and he said, "Yes. Yeah, it's been quite a trip so far, hasn't it?" I said, "Yeah, well, you could call it that." So can I just take a guess at which one of these ferries we're going to take to cross the water? He said, "Sure." He laughed. He said, "Sure, why not? Take a guess. 1 in 3 shot." So I looked out at the boat, and I said, at all three boats, and I said, "Well, This one's way too big. That must well have been a cruise ship. We're definitely not going on that one. This one, a little smaller, but it still seems to be holding up well enough in all of this rough water. And so I don't think that's going to be the boat we're on. I'm going to guess we're going on the lifeboat that can barely keep itself level enough for the vehicles to get onto it. And he was silent for a few seconds, and then he kind of laughed a little to himself. Well, yeah, that is actually the boat that we're going to use. How'd you come to that conclusion? And I explained to him how I came to that conclusion, and he smiled and he said, "Don't get too cynical. The trip is still young. It'll still be fun. You watch." I said, "All right, sir, I believe you." And so he went off, left me, and I was standing at the window still watching this. And about 30-45 minutes later, it was time for us to load onto the boat. And we get onto the boat, and this is where the real fun begins. This is where the trip really takes a turn for the worse. I mean, it was rough as it was. Now, shit was about to get real. The next part of this was actually slated to be the start of the next Dark Souls game, but they thought it would be too difficult for the person to get through, so they axed it and just went with their current offering. So, we're on the boat, and like I said, we're in the harbor still, and it is ridiculously rocky already. I mean, considering we're not even moving, we're just sitting in the freaking dock. It's, you know, it's not all that great. And before we leave, we have to, I'm going to try and talk while drawing this boat for, you know, talking about, you know, purposes, referencing purposes. So we're on the boat, and they're serving dinner before we leave. Okay, serving dinner before we leave. Yeah, and you had like a choice of various things. I wasn't too keen on actually eating. I thought to myself, "Self, you know, I feel you're a relatively intelligent person. I feel like you're a relatively intelligent person. I think you know where this is going if you eat a full dinner right before going out on the water." And so I didn't eat. I decided to skip on that, and instead I decided that I was just going to kind of relax. I hung out with friends, and I hung out with friends and just kind of talked. And so we're all discussing, you know, all the madness that had happened as usual, which was frequently what we ended up talking about. And everybody was kind of discussing, you know, the craziness back at the hotel and the cream fight, and how most people were still talking about how crazy our teachers had gotten when that had happened. But we were having a good time still, and people were enjoying themselves. 1 second, I'm just trying desperately to. There's that, and there's like a thing here, and a thing here. But yeah, we were having a relatively good time. Now, we weren't the only ones on this ship. you know, there were other groups on this ship, and we basically were sharing it with, there was a couple of truckers and a group of, like, elderly people that were with us. And beyond that, it was just pretty much, we just had the ship. That was like the whole thing. Just us. So the ship decides to head out. It's time. The captain says it's time to head out on the on our journey. And so we hit the high seas. So in the beginning of this whole thing, everybody's up at the front of the ship. Frickin' Microsoft Paint. Screw off. Everybody's at the front of the ship. And then we're all kind of doing homework and stuff, having just finished eating, or we're trying to do homework. We're trying desperately to do homework. It's not working out all that well, but we're trying to do some homework. And the reason why it's not working out all that well is because it's so friggin' rocky that it's almost impossible to actually write anything. But we're all up there, and we're all doing our homework and kind of chit-chatting and doing the usual. Almost done here. And we're all up at this point of the ship. Up in the front, sitting in the front. I'm sitting over here. Other people are sitting over here. And then a couple people decide to stand up. And up to the front here, this is a big window across the front of the ship, basically. And you can see out, we're on the top floor of the ship. You can see out on, over into the water. And when we were first leaving the harbor and we got out onto the, into the actual, onto the actual sea, you could, we were going into the waves, okay? So the waves, we were going into them. We weren't side to, we were going into them. And, it was kind of fun. The waves were really big. I mean, like, really big. And I'll try and describe to you just how big they were. So, you would basically, alright, so this, just to give you an outline of, or an understanding of what this is, and I apologize that I'm, like, trying desperately, I'm just trying to draw and write at the same time. This is the front, the ship, the back of the ship. Sick B. Yeah, so we're all up in and around here somewhere. And we had all decided to stand up, or a group of us had decided to stand up. We were at the front of the ship, and we were all watching ourselves go into these waves, and it was kind of crazy. Because eventually, what happened was, we got to the point in these waves where they were so big, that we would go into the wave, and when we got to the top of the crest of the wave, you would just see the sky. You wouldn't see the ocean anymore, you would just see the sky. And then, when you came back off the top of it, there would be a brief moment of weightlessness before you hit the water again. Because this is, again, relatively small boat, absolutely enormous waves. And that was fun, because we were going into the waves, and everybody was having a good time. So when we got weightless, there was, at the top of the window, there was a curtain rod across the top. And we would hold on to the curtain rod so that when we went weightless, it was kind of, it is what it is. We would just kind of float and fly, and it was kind of fun. It would just be, kind of be like a ride. And that was great. There was a guy over here by the name of Ben. And Ben, at the time, was holding on with one hand, and he was drinking some chocolate milk. And we were all having that blasty blast. And, but Ben, drinking the chocolate milk, he was the first person to actually vocally admit, I don't feel so good. I'm not feeling so hot. And as soon as he said that, obviously a couple other people were like, you know what? This also, you know, I'm not really enjoying this as much as I did like 5 minutes ago. And just when everybody started making that realization, we hit like the mother of all waves. I mean, the mother of all waves. And at this point, Mr. Dunbar had just walked into the room, and he was coming up the aisle here, and we hit this enormous wave, and we had hang time for like a solid 3 seconds, and Ben at the time had let go of the rail and of the curtain rod, and he got tossed back like 2 rows. He was like up here or whatever, and he got tossed back over the first row into the second row of chairs, and just got mangled. Even Dunbar, the big dude, you know, like 300 or 400 pounds, got tossed back into like this wall. He was eating a sandwich at the time. He had a hand, you know, he had his sandwich in hand, and he got thrown back into the. And everybody else was you know, grabbing onto this curtain rod for dear life. The curtain rod breaks under the weight of everybody holding onto it for so long, and the wave. When we hit the bottom of the wave, so when we got, you know, the weightlessness was over and we actually hit the water again, we hit so hard and it was such a fall that the ship like shook like crazy. When you hit and it was loud, it sounded like a gun, like a cannon or a group of cannons going off. And then you also heard like enormous amounts of smashing. And then you heard like people like, you know, rustling around and trying to get stuff. And so I'm saying, what the hell just happened? And so once the ship had gotten settled back down, I decided to walk down, there's supposed to be a door here, and come back through here, and I walk into like the main area. And I'm standing like right here. And I'm thinking, okay, what just happened? I'm looking around, and all of a sudden down here, this is a gift shop. Jeez, frick, using a gift shop. All right, so some genius, when they decided to put a gift shop on this ship, decided that it would be an amazing idea if they filled it with wonderful glass shelves and lots of glass collectibles or crystals and stuff like that. Let's put a glass-filled gift shop on a rinky-dink little piece of crap lifeboat that travels over some of the roughest water. Anyway, so basically what had happened was when we hit that big wave, we came down and bang, and you heard smash, crash, bang, boom, rumble. There was glass freaking everywhere. I mean, it had gone out the door, and it was all over the floor over here, and obviously this whole shop was just completely mangled. There was barely a gift left for anybody to buy in the gift shop. And on top of that, some of the food that was still in the pots in the kitchen, which was like around here. I know we didn't draw it in, but it was around here. The food had gotten out onto the floor, and it was all over the place. There was glass and food and everything all over this floor, and all over in this area. This whole area was just mangled. And so I observed that and went, oh, okay. Alright. Alright. And we were still hitting big waves, and I was kind of, so I was like trying to stabilize myself. And I was just like, whatever. So I went back. I went back up to my spot, and when I got there, people weren't looking so hot. You know, they had sat down, they were still trying to do work, but they weren't looking so good. Dunbar had since gotten up, and he was sitting down now. Nobody was standing, let's put it that way. And that's when we started going in to the waves sideways. So up until this point, we had been going into the waves front on. Now, anybody who's ever been on a boat or done a lot of fishing or deep sea fishing or anything on rough water or water period, you'll know that when you're going head into the waves, it's not so bad. Okay? It's not so bad. You can kind of get out. It's kind of like when you're in a car and you're going over top of like hills and you're driving at a relatively good speed and you're going over like kind of like almost mogul type hills in a car. You'll get that feeling where the stomach will come up and go down and go up and go down. You get that weird feeling. Most people can put up with that. That's not so bad. But when you start going sideways into the water, it is the worst thing ever. And around that time, that's when the captain, of the ship came down from his throne and called a meeting with the teachers to discuss the course of action that was going to be taken. Okay, so he came down and they were down here. They're all kind of just standing around here. There's the 3 teachers, there's the captain, there was, a nurse on the side of the captain here. And at this time, I was just kind of walking around the ship, and I was over in this area over here, because actually, this station thing here, frickin' paint, this station thing here was actually a GameCube with a TV, and there was a kid playing Mario Kart. And I was just kind of watching this kid, and I could hear what was going on over here. And so the captain says to the teachers, alright guys, we have a bit of a situation. And the teacher said, well, okay, yeah, we realize this. It's not exactly the coziest ride that we've ever been on. We have 2 options, the captain said. We can continue on, or we can turn around and go back to harbor, and you guys will have to wait another night and go back out. At this point, we're only about 30 minutes from the harbor. We can just turn around and do this, or keep going forward. And the teachers were all kind of looking at each other, and then Dunbar and Minicello looked at each other, and then Minicello looks at the captain, and he said, "Why in the hell are you asking us? We're not the captain. We're not the crew. Why are you asking? What are we supposed to tell you? We're gonna say yes, turn this boat around because the shit is epic out here. Why are you asking us? We're teachers. We're not sea captains. We don't know what protocol is when all the glass in the freaking glass gift shop and all the food is everywhere and people are getting tossed around. We don't know what the hell that is. We would probably just say, go back, yeah, sure." And the captain said, well, to be honest, this is actually the worst storm that I have had to be in over 15 years. And as soon as I heard that, I thought to myself, well, shit. Why not? Why not? Bring it on. Bring it on. What could possibly go wrong? Bring it on. Whatever. And the teacher said, alright, so that sounds pretty bad, but we still don't know what you want to do with this, so we'll leave it up to you. So they go back, the captain goes back up to his place, the teachers disperse back to check up on the students, and about 2 minutes later, the captain comes on the PA system and says, ladies and gentlemen, we have discussed with the crew, and we feel like it is possible to do this crossing today, so we are going to be going ahead with the trip. Please try not to stand or walk around too much unless you absolutely have to. Be wary of your step, and please try and enjoy your trip. And so I silently said to myself, fuck, and braced myself for what was going to be an incredibly long trip. So, at this point, like I said, we are going side 2 into the waves. And when the waves are that big, you're really rocking hard. I mean, you are going back and forth something fierce. People really started to get sick. Within probably 45 minutes of going sideways, people immediately started to get sick. I mean, they served a full freaking dinner service right before we left harbor. So everybody's on a full stomach, out on this, going side 2, with all this hell and chaos happening, which makes you nervous anyway, which doesn't help, and people are just power puking everywhere. I mean, everywhere I look, and one of my vices is that I've only been physically ill, like thrown up, maybe 5 times in my entire life, not including when I was an infant, obviously. But I didn't eat, and so I was like, you know what, I might be okay here, but I need to be distracted. I actually forgot an important little section here. This is right here. So... I was just like, alright, I need desperately to be distracted. You know, everything is falling apart and going to hell. I just need to get, you know, my mind off of this stuff. Everybody's puking everywhere. So, the kid gets off of Mario Kart, and I get onto this Mario Kart here. So, I am now sitting right here. And the kid had come back after I was on it for like 20 minutes and was like, I haven't... No! No, you can't! This is now my machine! I own this GameCube. You don't get to come back on this GameCube, because if I leave this GameCube, I'm gonna have a bad time. Go find your parents. So I was enjoying myself on Mario Kart, just trying desperately not to, you know, listen to the endless sounds. This orchestral, uplifting crescendo of vomiting everywhere. Because, really, you looked around the ship, and anywhere you looked, it was just... puke. 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 Everywhere. On the floor. On the chairs. Everywhere. Vomit. Everywhere. No... There was just not a open spot to be found. There was glass. Over here it was glass, food, and vomit. Over here it was vomit, vomit, and vomit, and everywhere else it was vomit. And there was like 3 nurses on this ship. They were trying to, you know, the janitors were trying to clean up. The nurses were trying to take care of like overly sick people. So what happens next? Well, I'm sitting here at the Gamecube Station. And people had been getting violently ill for a long time. And there was a group that were getting particularly bad. And so there were these 2 nurses who needed to come up with some sort of way of, you know, doing this efficiently. And this is one of the parts that people will go, no, this didn't happen. Well, guess what? It totally fucking happened. There was... Okay. There was a nurse. This is a bench, by the way. This right here, this is a bench. There was a nurse at one end. There was a nurse at the other end. And along here, there was about maybe 6, 7, 8 people or so. Okay. We're only going to get this many on, but whatever. They're all sitting on the line on this bench. And I can obviously see here and everything. They're really only about maybe 7 or 8 feet away from me, and I can see out of the corner of my eye everything going on here. This nurse at the top has a stack of sick bags. This nurse at the bottom of the line is standing next to a garbage can. The nurse at the top of the line hands a bag to the first person. They all kind of have a bag. Vomiting, goes the first person. Just hand it off. Get a fresh bag. Next person. Full bag. Hand it off to the nurse. Nurse puts it in the garbage. Next one. The friggin', it was like a station specifically set up for people just puking nonstop. Just speaking in tongues into a little plastic bag. And this whole time I'm playing on the GameCube and I'm listening to all this like and I'm just like I'm like, God, don't throw up, don't puke. You don't even have anything in your body to throw up anyway, but just don't do it. I'm just trying to race, and I'm racing terribly too. Like, I can't even concentrate. I'm just driving into walls and shit, and I'm just kind of like, whatever. Just trying desperately to stay focused, not on the sound of death and destruction happening next to me, but more on just, you know, the game at hand. Just trying terribly. And an assembly line of just terrible happening next to me. And so they're just passing the bags down, and there was this weird kind of out-of-body experience people started having where everything just started becoming kind of funny. Where just, even the people who were like just non-stop puking, it just started becoming funny. And the people in this line specifically just started kind of laughing in between puking. They're like, isn't this funny? Oh, that was a good one. Like, they crossed over the line into just some obscure form of entertainment. And they started counting how many bags they had personally filled. And there was, like, well, I think the highest, his name, it was another Ryan. His highest, he was the highest, and he had filled 11 bags by himself. 11 bags. And so, after a good hour or two, honest to God, my timelines for this are going to be weird. Because, I'm going to tell you right now, when I was in this situation, time didn't exist. The only thing that existed was just trying to survive this ordeal. I didn't really keep track of time all that much. I just kind of, like, went about my business. And just tried desperately not to just be puking nonstop. I have still not gotten sick at this point. While this was all happening, Mr. Dunbar was walking around and seeing how people were doing. Mr. Dunbar had a cast iron stomach, okay? The entire time this was going, he had like he had a few sandwiches with him. He would be walking around, patting people on the back, eating his sandwich. You're gonna be okay, son. You're gonna be okay. It's not a big deal. Get it out of you. Yeah, that's alright. Great sandwich. Like, just eating the sandwich and just making sure everybody was okay. Just being a baller. Zero fucks given by Dunbar. Just kind of going about it. No, never got sick, never anything. Just eating away, doing its own thing. Or doing his own thing. So, after I saw that he came down, he started, you know, talking to everybody. He saw that I was doing okay. He never came over to me. I got up and I decided that, it was about time that I needed to see what was going on in other parts of the ship. But just before I get up to leave, I hear something. Over here, and again, this is all weird because the boat is much longer than this, so this wouldn't be blocking these two. The tables would actually be further back here. There were a group of older ladies at one of these tables, playing, I don't know, canasta or some shit, whatever old ladies play with cards. And they were playing their own little game, and I heard one of them get really excited. Because they had just won the game. And they like, slapped down the cards and, you know, canasta! Or whatever the fuck they were playing. I don't know what the hell they were playing. But I look left, to watch after I heard this and see this, and we hit this big wave. This enormous wave, similar in size to the one that we had hit earlier, except we were going sideways. The only chair, other than the benches, that were locked to the floor was the one I was sitting in. Everything else was for dining and whatnot, so they were freely movable. They weren't bolted to the floor. So we get leaning hard into this wave. And this woman throws down her cart and canasta! Oh god! Everybody's going, yeah, good job, Ethel! Good job, Ethel, good job! Good game, really well played, Ethel. And then suddenly, Ethel, everybody starts going sideways. The chairs start tipping. You know, we're all kind of, I'll put on the webcam for this part here, just for a second. Okay, so this is mic is up in my face because I'm trying to do the, you know, the microphone, but everybody starts doing this. Okay? And the chairs only have so much grip. And eventually, Ethel's chair gives way. And she falls out of the chair. Not in the most graceful manner, because when we came back up, you know, the boat kind of like tilts back up. She rolls out of the chair. Faceplant. She's on the corner here. She is now on the floor over here. Faceplant right into the ground, knocks her out cold. And I'm watching this, and it's kind of like, it was kind of like one of those weird, surreal moments where you're watching it and you're like, oh god, she'd probably do something. But you don't actually move, because you're just kind of like, this doesn't possibly happen. Rolls over in the chair, bam, knocked out cold. So Ethel is on the ground, just on her face, rolling around. Now I'm going to try and do a reenactment, okay? I don't know how I'm going to do this, so I'm going to try and do a reenactment for you. Let's get this webcam. Alright. Alright. So Ethel falls out of her chair. And she rolls over. And she goes, oh god! And so she's on the floor like this. Just kind of, and we're still going into the waves. So she starts just like her lifeless body just okay. Her lifeless body is just rolling all over the place. Okay? And she's rolling around in, like I said, floors covered in all manner of vomit, all manner of food and glass. And her friends are sitting there going, oh god, Ethel, no! Ethel, oh my god, are you okay, Ethel? Oh my goodness gracious! And so one of the nurses comes running over and sees this poor elderly woman rolling around in vomit and glass and food, face first on the ground, knocked out cold, rolling into the waves all over the floor. And starts helping her out. And so once I saw the nurse was helping her out, I said, okay, maybe I'm okay to leave now. So I decided to go for a journey. I wanted to check in on everybody. Now again, concept of time was gone, but it was dark outside at this point.